Can I get my Boss Katana to sound as close as I can to my Fender Deluxe Reverb reissue? We're going to find out. I spent many hours adjusting the settings of my Boss Katana 50, it's Mark II, to get it to sound as much as possible like my Deluxe Reverb reissue. I tried doing it by ear and I got some pretty good results, but there was still something that wasn't quite right, especially in the very low end and especially in the high, sparkly end. So then I thought, what if I use some audio tools that I do have to measure the sound of the Deluxe Reverb, scientifically, if you will, and then adjust, very fine-tune the Katana until I can get it to match that EQ curve as best as possible. When I was doing it by ear, I started using an A-B switch so I could go back and forth really quick and then make adjustments so I could hear the Fender and then I could hear the Katana. I wasn't going through any pedals, I was just going straight from Telecaster straight into the amps because I wanted to try to capture the amp as natural as possible. That being said, I never play like that. I'm always using pedals and I always have a little overdrive pedal on at all times. But still, I thought, let's just try to keep this simple and get the natural sound of the amps, and then theoretically they should sound similar once they have pedals in front of them. The results, it happens, are pretty good. It's not exactly the same, but it does sound definitely good enough for rehearsals and probably good enough for small gigs, and it certainly does sound Fender-like. To get it to sound exactly the same, it may be impossible. There's more to it than just EQ, which is mostly what we're doing here in these adjustments. A tube amp does have a lot of things going on that's going to make it sound the way it does. So it may be impossible to get it exactly the same, at least with the current technology, but who knows, 5 years, 10 years from now, I would not be surprised if Boss Katana or some other company has an amp that is $300, weighs only 25 pounds, and you really cannot tell the difference. And I look forward to that day. Before I show you exactly how I did all this, let me just say that you can download the file for your own Boss Katana amp and import it into your amp so you can use this same sound that I've created. You can download it from my website. The link is below in the description. In this download, I'm also going to include a few variations. You know, as we use different guitars with different types of pickups, single coil or humbuckers, or, you know, as we might want a little more treble or a little less treble or a little more bass, I've made a few variations. It might give you the sound that you're looking for. So it's not exactly the amp that I have, which is the sound that I'm used to. Now, according to some very well-researched websites that I found, Fender amps tend to have what they call a mid-scoop, which means that the mids are lower than you would find in other amps. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's no mids, because if there were no mids, then we wouldn't really be able to hear ourselves in the mix when you're playing with a full band. But it does mean that there is less there. And according to this website, where this is designed for people who are actually building amps, that mid scoop is usually around the 500 to 600 hertz or so. One of the main things I noticed about that is the Katana has a little more dirt, especially when I'm hitting hard, but that would be easily adjusted. And when I show you what I've done inside the Katana, then one could easily adjust that. But also, I kind of like the sound of it, so I'm not sure I would change it. So looking at the Boss Tone Studio here, I'll show you what I did. We've got it on the clean setting because that's ultimately what I want. I want a clean amp that I can use pedals with, which is what I'm used to. I've got the gain up to 50, which is maybe accounting for why we're getting a little bit of dirt. We could certainly turn that down a bit and maybe turn the volume up a bit to compensate, but you know, I kind of liked it, so I'm going to leave it there. Now, first off, let's look at the EQ section. I'm going to do it in this order. This is where I've made most of the adjustments to give it the same EQ curve that you saw on the screen there when I was playing. We got some low gain because it does have that nice bit of bass. Some low mid gain actually is pretty high to get that big hump at the end there. But then you can see we do have pulled down in the high mids and basically have nothing at the top here. But also you can see up here in this equalizer that we've got the bass turned up. Middle is actually just pretty middle, and treble is pretty low. So that's actually interesting that's not what I would have expected. I would have expected the mids to be pulled down quite a bit and the treble to be pretty high. I mean, that's what we would think of as a normal Fender Deluxe Reverb. But that's interesting. That's what those settings ended up being in order to match my particular Deluxe Reverb reissue. And hey, maybe there's something particular about mine. Mine does have a different speaker in it. It's got the, what's it called? The special edition or something. I don't know. It's an Alnico speaker, basically. I decided to get a lot of the crispiness by using this treble booster instead of just cranking up the treble. And again, that might account for why it's getting a bit overdriven in the highs. But really, this has turned up just a tiny bit. Wow, it's not turned up much, but anyway, that's giving it some of that crispiness that I like. And then what have I done? I've got... So one of the things I notice when I'm playing my Fender is that when I hit the strings hard, especially a single note, I can feel some kind of sponginess there. Like it's not such a loud, spiky sound if I hit it harder. There's a bit of compression that might be happening from the tubes. I'm not sure where exactly that's coming from in the tube amp, but I couldn't quite replicate that exactly. So I put this little compressor on, and I put it on just very tiny bit to emulate that little bit of compression feeling that I get when I'm playing that Deluxe Reverb. And then of course, actually, you know, we have quite an impressive spring reverb on the Katana. I mean, I think it sounds good. It's got that real natural splashy feeling. I like a bit of extra pre-delay here than what would actually be on the Fender. But I really like that very short pre-delay. It sounds a bit like having a delay on it, but I'm not actually using any of these delays here. And then what I also did on my patch here that you can download is I put the tremolo channel is already there. So when you've got the patch loaded, you don't have to have this plugged into the computer to match what you have on the Fender Deluxe Reverb, because the Fender Deluxe Reverb, of course, does have a nice tremolo channel. So all you would have to do on the actual Katana, if you're playing a rehearsal or a gig or whatever, is just turn up the tremolo channel here, and it's already there for you, just as you would playing the Fender. I chose the vintage cab resonance. I can't tell a big difference. There's definitely some difference between these, but I went with vintage. It seems to fit. It seems to work. Makes sense. And yeah, that's about it. So just remember, you can download this Katana patch from my website and let me know what you think. I'm going to explore some more about this. I mean, I could do the same process on some of my other amps. I got a Vox AC15 there. Or here's a crazy idea. What if we downloaded an isolated guitar track from, I don't know, a famous recording by Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, George Harrison, or whoever, and did the same process with that guitar tone that they had, and I know you can find a lot of those isolated guitar tracks on YouTube now, and that could be a really interesting experiment, and you could get something that is quite close. Last but not least, we'll leave you with some samples of the 2 amps with the pedals that I normally use. That's a mkII Superfat mod, and I got a little bit of the mkII Compressor Plus on that. Overall, I'm pretty darn impressed with the Katana. Would I use it for recording? No, I would not use it for recording. It's not there yet. It sounds cool, but I don't quite feel that it's really the same. Would I use it for rehearsals? Absolutely, and that's why I bought it. It weighs only 25 pounds. It was only 300 bucks. In Canada, it's about 320 bucks. I got it on sale. That's well worth it. And honestly, some small gigs that I do where the acoustics in the room aren't even very good, do I really need to bring the heavier amp? I don't know. I can throw that Boss Katana in the back of the trunk and not really care if it gets banged up, because worst case scenario, I can buy another one. Downside is fixing one of those things, like most digital amps, not easy to fix. But then neither is my Fender Deluxe Reverb reissue, because it's a reissue. It's not hardwired in there, so hard to say. Anyway, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I got it's mostly guitar lesson stuff, but might explore more of this Boss Katana patches for you soon. Thanks a lot.